Hey guys, how are you all? Welcome back to my channel. Today we will see what if Naruto hates his parents for abandoning him. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments. Namikaze Minato expected a few things when he summoned the Shinigami into the mortal realm. Something on the lines of a large, skeletal monster, possibly with some sort of knife or scythe. Definitely a scythe, but he most certainly didn't expect a blonde skinny man in a bucket hat with a cane by his side. Did I make a mistake? Double-checking his seal array, he desperately tried to see if there was anything wrong with the summoning he had just performed. Meanwhile, the other blonde man looked around himself with a semi-amused and dazed expression. Here I was working on a new Gigai, and I get sucked into this place. Where the hell am I? This doesn't seem to be Earth, or any place like it. And what the hell is that? The thing in question was a giant red fox with 9 tails. Narrowing his eyes, he released some Ryotsu to try and identify what it actually was. Odd, it is emitting an energy that I have never seen before. It's powerful, and seems to be like Ryotsu, except not. Yet it seems oddly like a hollow Sero. I wonder. The Yondaime, after some muttering, scribbling and staring at the other blonde, decided to speak. This might be a stupid question and all, but are you the Shinigami by any chance? He asked hopefully. The other turned around to him and said, "Of course not, I'm just a handsome and perverted scientist," where a fan popped into his hand and was raised to cover his mouth. Minato's sweat dropped. Scientist? He thought with a puzzled expression. Seeing that his audience was slightly confused, and noticing the rather decidedly low levels of technology in the surrounding areas, he decided to be slightly more serious. Relax, to answer your question, yes, I am a Shinigami. My name is Urahara. Urahara Kazuki. I'm going to take a wild guess and say that you're the one that summoned me here, nay? Well, I tried to summon something to help me seal that. He pointed to the rampaging Kyuubi, into my son. He pointed to a cute infant lying on his back, blissfully unaware of what was going on. Well, questions about your parenting aside, why can't you just defeat it, or drive it off? Asked a genuinely curious Kazuki. Trust me, I would if it was anything other than a damned elemental beast where one strike of its tail can cause tsunamis. Replied a rather indignant Hokage. Kazuki looked at the fox with more respect now. Sure, it was large and intimidating, but so were many other hollows, much like Jillian's. It was in his experience that the most deadly things were those that resembled humans. Intelligence was a wonderful and terrible thing, in equal measures. So, what do you expect me to do about it? I'm not sure I can seal. Before he could finish that question, the Biju finally took notice of them. Then again, when you were riding on top of a massive toad summon, it's hard not to attract attention. It tried to take a swing at both of them, bellowing as it did. Gamabunta jumped away, drawing its tanto to defend itself. It was getting increasingly nervous. It took the Yondaime a good half an hour to prepare the summons before he rode off to confront the 9-tailed fox. As things were not turning out as well as planned, they were out in the open and presenting a lovely target. Things were not looking good. I hate to rain on your last parade, Gaki, but if you don't do something soon, you're not going to be my underling anymore. I know I'm good, but really. I'm trying, damn it. Well, Urahara-san, is there anything that you can do to help us? Konoha will be ever thankful for your assistance. Normally Kazuki was a laid-back kind of person that wouldn't really interfere in such things. Hell, it wasn't really a hollow per se, and he had no obligation or duty to send its soul. It was doubtful to whether it had a soul in any event. But seeing the desperate shinobi beneath him fighting and dying to delay the great beast, and the frantic and determined look that Minato was giving him, he was not indifferent to the situation and his suffering. And hell, he wasn't the Taiko for the 12th division for nothing. He loved nothing more than a problem that he could find a solution to. But first he needed to study it. I'll see what I can do. He gave a preoccupied wave of his hand, his mind currently working on the issue. He really did need to minimize the damage the fox was doing first though. Bakudu 99, Kin. Fabric burst out from his hands and tried to bind the fox in an effort to immobilize him. Iron shafts then tried to pierce through to hold it in place. Sadly, it didn't work. It would have taken a hell of a lot of Ryotsu for him to begin to bind one limb, let alone the whole beast along with its tails. Okay, I guess I had to call in for some help. One thing that Kazuki was good at was creating portals. It wasn't something that Soul Society approved of, as they liked to control the movements of their Shinigami. But because of his position as head of the Research and Development Division of the Gode 13, he had a semi-legitimate excuse for things that would land others in hot water. This one thing was a summoning stone that he gave to his closest friends. If they ever needed help, they could use their own to summon the other. Kazuki wondered if it would actually work, as he didn't really know where he was at the moment, and he had the nagging suspicion that he was in another world. Luckily for him, they did. The sound of fabric tearing got his attention, and when he looked up into the sky he saw a hole open up and out came two figures. One was a tall male and the other a dark-skinned female. Both of them wore black robes with a white haori and carried swords with them. The man looked around him, found Urahara and stormed over to him. "You idiot, I was in the middle of something, damn it. Why did you call me to this place?" He asked this with a dead serious expression on his face, and some severely clenched eyebrows. Not to be left out, the other came over and snarled at him, "And I was busy teasing my Fuku Taiko as well. You better have a damn good reason for calling me here." She nearly laughed, damn it. Kazuki gave a sardonic grin and pointed to a slightly perplexed-looking fox with 9 tails. The others turned around and were silent for a few moments. "Well, I've seen you do some weird shit, Kazuki, but that takes the cake," commented the woman. "I didn't create that thing, you idiot. This man," he pointed to the Hokage, "managed to summon me here to seal that thing into his son." Isshin looked incredulous. "Into his son? Man, I know I'm never going to be as bad a father as you are." Little was he to know that he would regret those words in the future. Urahara coughed to redirect their attention. "Well, that aside, I was wondering if you could try to kill that with me. And if we can't, would you hold it off while I try to think of something? Hey, don't write me out of this picture, damn it." Minato gave a slight pout at this. While he recognized that the three of them were probably more powerful than him, he still wasn't a pushover. There was a reason why he was named the Yellow Flash and had ninja flee on sight if they ever encountered him. Being discounted like this made him feel awfully helpless, a new and entirely unwelcome feeling. The three Shinigami gave him an appraising look. Thankfully their powers were not limited by the council and they could fight at full strength, though killing it was another question altogether. But they also recognized the look of wounded pride in his eyes that had seen comrades stand and fall in their desperate attempts to stop a frenzied beast. They understood that they could not ask him sit back quietly. The three of them simply gave a nod to him before they burst into action. Well, things could have gotten better. The three Shinigami first assumed that the Kyuubi was some sort of Jillian Manos Grande. Large, slow and powerful. Well, it was large and powerful, but was more agile than what was physically possible and managed to fire red flames at them. Things turned out for the worst when all 9 tails were used in the fight that they could barely hold back with their Zanpakutos. It appears that it was holding back its power until the Shinigami had appeared on the field. What amazed them was that Minato was using odd techniques to fight off the fox, things that they had never seen before. Things that he called jutsus that seemed to manipulate a form of energy called chakra. Kazuki deduced that it was the same thing as Ryotsu, except that it was only used by living beings. Urahara was observing on the sidelines, trying to think of a way to finish off the Biju. Straightforward attacks were doing no good, as it was regenerating too fast for it to do any damage. Chakra-based attacks were not really effective against it, but oddly enough Ryotsu was. I wonder, Ryotsu is the spiritual energy of the dead. Chakra is the physical and mental energy of the living. That would mean that they are diametrically opposed to each other. In the background, Kazuki could feel the unleashing of a Zanpakuto's Shikai. That means that Kido spells should be effective against this. But the most powerful destructive spells were made against humanoid enemies. Even a Kurohitsugi wouldn't be enough against it. The initiative was regained by the remaining fighters, with the Kyuubi roaring its fury at the both of them. I wonder if I could manage to seal it into a Gigai that is filled with Ryotsu so that it would absorb or annihilate its chakra. But I don't really have enough time to do this. The cry of a baby brought him out of his thoughts. He slowly walked over to the child and his face furrowed again in thought. Wait, if we could sever the body of this beast and seal the soul into the child, we could then infuse this boy with enough Ryotsu for that purpose. For all purposes, that damn fox is still alive, and its power would still be there even if we took the physical body. It really was an interesting animal. In the battle, the cry of Bankai could be heard. Combined with Shunpo and the Hiraishin technique, all the combatants were a blur against a howling mass of red fury. Shit, they're unleashing their Bankai already? Okay. Well, I don't have any other plan, so I guess we had to wing it. I'm sorry for this kid, but when you die I'll try my best to send you to Soul Society. Things never really turn out the way we wanted. The ad hoc plan was to convert all of Minato's chakra into Ryotsu, and then infuse it into the child. Doing so would cause the death of both the child and the fourth. Minato was willing to accept his death, but not that of his son. But given the choice of 2 deaths as opposed to everyone in the village, it seemed like there was no choice. Giving the 2 a moment together, Minato held his child with much tenderness. Son, I'm so sorry that it has come down to this. What I'm about to do is unforgivable, and I can't really ask you to forgive me anyways. At least we will all die heroes because of this. The last part was said with much bitterness. The baby looked up with a dazed gurgle, unable to comprehend the sacrifice that was being forcibly imposed upon him. He reached out his small finger to grasp at his father, who looked down on him like a god. Minato had to suppress a shudder as he steeled himself for what he was about to do. The 3 Shinigami came up to him, where Kazuki said, "It's time, our binding spells won't hold for much longer." Of course, I just wanted him to know how much I love him. Tears were slowly sliding down his cheeks. Minato had given much in his service to the village that he loved so much. But asking for his life and that of his son seemed to be too much to ask. But the cold fact was that at this moment in time, there was no one else that could do this. All the villagers were evacuated, and the only reason that his son was still there was because of delivery complications that forced him to remain in Konoha. Minato held his son's little outstretched hands, and for the last time his heart broke at the cries that he was making as he subconsciously realized that something wasn't right. Kazuki gave them a few moments before asking softly, "Before we do this, let us know your name and his, so we can honor your sacrifice." Minato laughed hollowly. "My name? Call me Namikaze Minato. And my son, well, I'm sure his mother would have loved to have called him Naruto." He stopped himself before he became more sentimental than he was already. "Before we go, let me write a letter to let everyone know what really happened on this day." With nothing left but determination in his body, he steeled himself for the coming darkness and said, "Let's finish this." What was left was silence. On a fallow field the 4th Hokage lay dying, his body nearly empty of the chakra that a human needed to live. Through the use of a kinjutsu and some Shinigami help, he had managed to infuse all of his chakra into his son, before it was converted into pure Ryotsu by Kazuki. Against the combined Bankai of 3 Shinigami captains, the physical body of the Kyuubi was torn to parts. But the truth was that the Kyuubi was more a being of pure chakra than of flesh. Its container was merely a medium to separate the soul from contamination of the outer world. As the soul was out in the open and exposed, they used their skills to force it into another medium. It was finally held in place by a complicated seal from Minato to prevent the fox from escaping. A human body was never meant to hold Ryotsu, and its presence would normally cause a person to die. However, Naruto managed to stay alive, and this scared the crap out of Urahara. It could only really mean one thing only. Naruto had somehow become a Shinigami. Not only that, he had the entire chakra of the Kyuubi at his disposal. This meant that he was a being with a hell of a lot of power that should not have been able to coexist at the same time. Even that wasn't really the truth of the matter. Kazuki was left pondering this and was tempted to take the baby back to Soul Society with him, but he realized that if the others found out what he just did, he would be lucky to be exiled. An execution was not out of the picture, and he realized that he needed to do something really quick. And that was a good old-fashioned cover-up. He had just managed to create a human Shinigami hybrid, and sealed within it was a hollow-like soul. If he didn't know any better, he had just created something that defied the boundaries of existence. This shocked him. It also perversely pleased him at the same time. What the hell do I do now? He asked himself. If this ever got out, he would be lucky if he was allowed to draw another free breath. His frantic musings would have gone further if Konoha forces were not arriving on their very location. Only the dark-skinned female seemed to be aware of the implications of their actions. "Look, we have just exhausted all of our energy to take out that beast. We need to get back to Soul Society before they realize that we just vanished into another world. We can deal with the fallout then, but we need to leave now." Nodding his assent, Urahara looked around him and said, I think I can find my way back to this place once more, and we really need to keep an eye on this boy. This should have never happened in the first place, he muttered with confusion. Kazuki managed to open a portal back to Soul Society, and as they stepped back into the R&D division, the black-haired man asked, and what the hell was that black ball that you used to convert that energy into Ryotsu? Well Ishin, that was a little something that I was working on when I was summoned to that place. I think I'm going to call it the Hogyoku. The Sandame sighed as he read the last testament of his predecessor and successor. The irony of such a situation was not lost on him. Damn it, it was for me to pass the flame on to him. The will of fire travels from the oldest to the youngest generation. It should have never have ended like this. But life rarely gives us what we want, and it is how we deal with our burdens that really shows the measure of a man. But some burdens were never meant to be borne by anyone, at least not alone. The fourth's last wishes were that he and his son be remembered as heroes. Especially his son, who had no choice in the matter. Things did not work out as he had expected, and who would have thought that the mere fact of survival would make things more complicated? Right now, the wounds were too fresh. Corpses lay scattered across the field, most of them in pieces. Grieving loved ones were eager to turn their anger on any target that presented themselves. Reason and rationality be damned, they wanted their pound of flesh now. The fact that hatred was slowly and surely being turned onto the small blonde child on his desk made his heart clench in two. What am I to do with you, Naruto? The Hokage thought sadly. The Council of Fire was slowly, but surely, rallying under those that demanded Naruto's death to completely eliminate the Kyuubi threat. While the Sandame had every confidence that Minato did the job properly, many were unconvinced that a mortal could seal a beast such as the Kyuubi no Yoko, and they needed to finish off what he had started. A mortal couldn't, but with help of 3 death gods, it was just possible. Sarutobi snarled at such thoughts. Those fools would spit upon the last wishes of their savior, and dare claim that they were carrying out his wishes. Disgust swelled up and clouded his thoughts, and he tried his hardest to dispel them and get back onto the problem at hand. Just then, a person knocked at his door and opened it. In came the wan and haunted figure of a red-haired kunoichi. Ah, the real tragedy starts to unfold. Uzumaki Kushina had endured much in her short life. Having the love of her life taken away after having a child together was a bitter blow. But having the child used as a sacrifice by said man was in many ways something that she couldn't ever accept or forgive. Even now, I'm not sure if she is happy that Naruto survived, or if she wishes him to be dead. Sarutobi had monitored her actions towards the blonde baby and was seriously disturbed by what he saw. At times she hugged the child like she would never let go. At times it looks like she was about to crush him with a cold and detached look in her eye. The medic Nin said that she was suffering from postnatal depression. Even with an Anbu trailing her, I'm not sure if she will be the child's savior, or the one to take his life away. While logically Naruto was the most innocent one in the whole room, there was a part in all of them that feared and blamed him for what he held, and what might be in the future. What am I supposed to do? A mother that could be a threat to her own child, a council calling for his death, the civilian population grieving and mourning their losses. Other nations were aware of their misfortune, and if they showed any bit of weakness at all, then all of these sacrifices would have been for nothing. Minato, couldn't you have found another way? At least one that left you alive to clean up your mess? You selfish son of a bitch. Getting back on track, he turned his attention to his more immediate problem. Kushina, please take a seat, we have much to speak about. The day of the sealing was something dark and terrible. It all began with a decision, with the best intentions that spawned something unexpected. Konoha, Central District. People usually greet the end of a day with some degree of happiness. Either because work is over, the day is done and a new one can arise again, or that it was time to relax in the comfort of one's home, with family and loved ones. For Uzumaki Naruto, he had none of those things to look forward to. Making the long walk back to his apartment, he couldn't help but notice the veiled glances, the hardening of people's eyes, and the insidious whispers floating around him. By his side was a tattered teddy bear that had seen much better days. And if you were to pay close attention, you could see it being clenched tightly by its ears as it was dragged along the ground. Trying the best to ignore what was happening around him, Naruto did what he normally did in these circumstances. He retreated into himself, into his private world where no one stared at him. No one said harsh and cruel things just at the edge of his hearing. A place where he was left alone, free from the reality that ever awaited him. Unfortunately, he still was alone, even in his own mind. Like a person following a standard routine, he managed to make his way into a small, dank complex and into his apartment. He noted with dull fascination that there was new graffiti on his door, and someone had left a noose around the handle. He looked at it for a moment before taking it off and throwing it over his shoulder. For the last few months he had been expecting things such as that, to the extent that it rarely ever fazed him anymore. Naruto unlocked the door and went into the living room. He saw that the clock read 7 o'clock and decided to eat. He went to his kitchen and rummaged around in his pantry. Instant ramen, more instant ramen. I love the stuff, but day after day it gets so boring. He sighed to himself. It's not like I can afford anything better, and even if I could, I can only seem to buy things that are expired, or look like they have been opened already. He placed a kettle on to boil, and sat down, watching the steam slowly accumulate as the water reached its boiling point. It wasn't as if there was much for him to do while waiting. His apartment was rather empty, only being furnished with some seats, an empty bookcase and a simple futon in his bedroom. It was functional and cold, utterly sterile. Once the water was done, he poured it into the container and started eating. Cleaning up was easy, he merely threw the cup away and made his way into bed. He didn't even bother to take his clothes off before collapsing into bed. He closed his eyes and slowly drifted off into sleep, with one thought on his mind. Ka-san, where are you? Why did you leave me? Flashback. She said that she was just taking a trip away to see an old friend. Of course, he begged her to let him come along, but she said that he had to be a good boy and stay in the village. Apparently it was too dangerous to take a little boy out into the open country. She promised him that she would come back with a present for him, but only if he was good and did what he was told. Now Naruto-kun, I need you to stay in this house and look after it while I am gone, do you understand? Don't worry now, I will get someone to check up on you and I will come back as soon as I can, she promised with a brittle smile. Most kids would have believed in their parents. But Naruto wasn't like most kids, not even at his precocious age. He had an awful feeling that something bad was about to happen, and that he wanted to be with his mother if it did occur. But in the end, he stayed silent and smiled at her. She was his mother, she wouldn't do anything that would hurt him, right? As Kushina saw her child smile at her, her heart was torn into slightly smaller pieces. Emotions were warring within her, the primary ones being guilt and anger. Guilt that she was abandoning her child to a village that would turn on him, guilt that she wasn't strong enough to be the mother that Naruto needed, and anger at the entire situation that they were placed in. For the last 6 years Kushina had been living more of an existence than a life. After losing her lover she had problems readjusting to reality. Life goes on, regardless of the personal tragedies that occur, and living in the past only gives rise to regret. Such platitudes are easy to say, but when faced with the situation personally, it was hard for her to move on when every time she saw her son, she saw the face of his father, the same facial structure, the same spiky blonde hair. It was like she was being mocked by her loss by some sick twist of karma. To add insult to her injury, 3 whisker-like marks had formed on Naruto's face as a result of the sealing. There were times when she was washing Naruto that she had vigorously, even maniacally, tried to scrub them off his face, as if she could remove the taint from his body, until his cries brought her back. This in part led to Naruto becoming more subconsciously independent as she realized that she could not always control her actions around her son. Even after 6 years, if someone were to ask her if she loved her son, she would be hard-pressed to give an answer. Her head said that Naruto was her son, no more and no less than that. But deep in her, there was a seed of resentment that she desperately tried to deny. The more she ignored it, the greater it grew until one day she found herself over Naruto while he was sleeping. In her hand was a kunai that she gripped until her knuckles were white with the pressure. Desperately afraid, she ran back into her room, panting with fear with what she had almost done. She tried to convince herself that it wouldn't happen again, that it was just something she had no control over. But, over time, as she kept waking up in the same situation over and over again, she realized that she had to do something. As she was moving away, she turned back and saw Naruto jumping up and down, waving his arms to get her attention. "Ka-san, come back quickly please. Remember to write to me, and don't forget to get my present when you come back. I love you." With those last words cutting into her, she managed to fake a smile and wave back at him before she turned and hurried off to the gates. When she was out of his sight, Naruto stopped waving and felt a shiver come over him. Brushing it off as nothing more than an errant breeze, he started walking back to his home, counting down the time until she would return home. Little did he know that he was in for a hell of a countdown. End flashback. Naruto slowly woke up when the sun's rays flashed upon his face. Giving a tired yawn, he got up lethargically and went to the bathroom, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. As he was brushing his teeth, he looked at his reflection in the mirror and wondered what the hell he was going to do today. After his mother had left and did not return, he was shifted into various foster homes, each of them reluctantly taking him in before kicking him out again. The excuses were all the same. They were unable to care for Naruto due to his special needs, and that he would be better cared by another family, any family as long as it wasn't theirs. What do they mean by special needs? There is nothing wrong with me, is there? After so many attempts, it was decided that Naruto was to be placed into an orphanage. While that had worked for a while, his location was discovered by others, and there were times at night when people would come and demand loudly for Naruto to come out and face them. Rocks were thrown, windows broken, and there were serious fears that they would one day storm the orphanage. He remembered those dark times where he was hiding in his room, trying to ignore what was happening around him by wrapping his blanket around him, praying for the sun to rise again. It's all going to be all right in the morning. Just a little bit longer. This became his mantra for the long nights ahead of him. After this had happened, what friendships Naruto had with the orphans crumbled. All of them were afraid of him, afraid that the men in the dark would hurt them if they stayed close to him. And most of all, they were afraid that no foster family would take them in if they were friends with him. It was the most poignant introduction to negative emotions, at such a young age, that most kids his age didn't have to face. Throughout his life, Naruto had always noticed that he was treated differently, that others always seemed to go out of their way to make him feel miserable. While his mother was still with him, it was not as noticeable, but when she left, it seemed that someone had called open season on Uzumaki Naruto. First of all, his house was forcibly sold by the bank when no one made the payments to the mortgage. His mother's bank accounts were also mysteriously empty, leaving him with nothing but an allowance given by the Hokage to live off. Whenever he asked the old man why these things happened to him, he would never get a proper explanation. It would always be something on the lines of, "It's something that you will understand when you're older, Naruto. It's not you, Naruto, it's just that they can't seem to see what a great child you actually are, Naruto. It is nothing that you have done. Don't worry, it will get better in the future." After a series of contradictory and useless explanations, he gave up on asking the Sandaime for reasons. Though he didn't show it, Sarutobi was inwardly glad that he didn't have to answer those awkward questions, and prayed that things would get better. All of this had an effect on the young blonde. Beforehand he was a happy enough child, oblivious to the things around him, and had the attention, if lukewarm love, of his mother. After she had left, he was exposed to the world around him, and he finally saw and experienced something no child ever should. Loneliness, neglect, hate, indifference, fear, longing, despair, hopelessness. After being told to leave by the orphanage, Sarutobi reluctantly agreed and managed to get a small apartment for him, as well as a small allowance for living expenses. He had been living there for the last few months, and in that short amount of time, he gained a small measure of independence. But a 6-year-old could hardly be expected to cook for himself and clean an entire house, something which even adults have trouble with. Given no direction and loneliness being his constant companion, Naruto was literally an island unto himself. With the lack of guidance, he spent most of his time in the park, looking at happy families playing with each other. It was just a stark reminder of something he never really had. And he saw children oblivious to the reality of the world around them. He hated them for that. And how he envied them for that as well. Every day would follow the same meaningless routine, and every day he would lose a bit more strength, a bit more of his will. And all of this went unnoticed among those living in the village hidden in the leaves. Soul Society. 12th Division Headquarters. I wonder, it all seemed a bit easy. Thought Urahara Kazuki. The fallout from the ceiling turned out to be very anticlimactic for the three captains of Saratii. When he came back to Soul Society, he discovered that only a few minutes had passed by while he was in that strange new world. It made things much easier to cover up, explained to anyone who asked. His friends just pushed the blame onto him, saying that if anyone asked them what had happened, they would say that he had summoned them as a joke, before saying that they had some paperwork to catch up on and leave in a hurry. He wasn't that impressed that his friends would ditch him like that, but luckily no one really noted their absence at all. Point 1. Time in that place seems to be displaced in comparison to ours. But I wonder what the time dilation factor actually is between here and there. Pushing that to the back of his mind, he sat back and thought back on what he had just seen. And more importantly what he had just created. Kazuki had an unabashed love of experimenting and creating things that most people would have left alone. Why he did it, well, not even he could give an answer to that question. It usually revolved along the lines of being. It would have some use, by someone, in some time, somewhere. Making the Shinigami stronger can hardly be a bad thing, right? Or more directly, why not? Usually his friends and colleagues could give him an ever-growing list of why he shouldn't actually do it, but that was nothing compared to the agony he felt when the Shinigami Woman Society came and complained that the names that he gave to his beloved creations were not cute enough. Why can't they be thankful that I made their lives slightly easier, or more interesting? He lamented with a sigh. He looked at the black sphere lying on his desk and gave another sigh. I get the feeling this will be the greatest thing I have ever created, or the worst. A part of him was afraid for the blonde baby that had his entire being changed that night. Kazuki had no idea what the hell could have happened, and whether his power was stable enough to control that damned fox. And that led him to think about what that fox actually was. And what the hell was chakra really? He thought it was physical and mental energy of a living being, but on closer examination, he realized that there was something wrong with that explanation. He just didn't know what, but if he were to trust his instincts on this one, it would seem that the mental component of chakra seemed to be like Ryotsu. Was the spiritual energy of a dead person and a living being comparable to each other? Filing those thoughts away for future contemplation, he realized that the time he spent here meant that Naruto would have aged by a significant amount of time already. Convinced that he needed more data and observation on the younger blonde, he planned to make a trip to see how things were progressing. Being cautious, he pulled out an experimental Gigai and implanted a pre-production Gikongan into it. He had managed to create one that could act as a decoy, useful when he needed a distraction, or he wanted to avoid long boring meetings. He once used it to do paperwork, but seeing that it was programmed to mirror his personality, the Gigai tried to create other ones to do it for him. This led to so many bodies being created after another until Kazuki came back and destroyed them all. As much as he hated to admit it, having more than one of him was probably a bad thing. Pretend to be me until I come back. If anything important happens, just stall for time, okay? The faux body nodded dutifully. Got it, boss. With that done, he went off to get a few more things for his trip. If Naruto was really a Shinigami, then he would need a certain something. Konoha, Hokage's office. I'm getting too old for this shit. It wasn't the first time that thought came up, and during the last few months, he had felt all of his 6 decades of life bear down upon him. Is there a sin worse than failure? He gave a bitter laugh. Yes, having those failures stare back at me. The shinobi known as the Professor sighed when he looked at his scrying orb. The fates were never kind to you, Naruto, and the way things are going, I am really not sure of what to do. Being called to serve after the Yondaime's demise, he hoped to only be a caretaker before some other worthy candidate could be found. The simple fact was that the vaunted will of fire in him was slowly burning out, and somebody needed to take over his position. Make no mistake, the Sandaime would protect his beloved village with his life, but certain events have shaken his belief in Konoha. He stood up and looked at the massive stone monument where each Hokage had their visage carved upon that massive rock face. Ah, Minato, if you were looking down on us, how would you feel? Hell, you didn't even expect your child to survive that night, so maybe you didn't even care. More importantly, if you were here, what the hell would you do about this problem? What would you think of your wife who abandoned your son to his fate? Once again he cursed Kushina's actions. Naruto was always a happy and lively child, but after the events he was less lively, smiled less and stopped interacting in the world. It was really unhealthy that all he did was stare at families all day. Nothing good would ever come from it, but he was reluctant to interfere. He was at a loss to deny him that, but if Naruto was going down the path that he was currently heading down, he could only really see two branches from the cardinal route. Suicide, voluntary exile. Both options were unacceptable. With those thoughts in mind, he looked down at a piece of paper that could solve this problem. It wasn't a great solution, but it was a solution nonetheless. If nothing else came up, then it might be lesser evil. He grimaced at that thought. Konoha, outskirts near the fall of the Kyuubi no Yoko. A small tear opened up near a clearing, where the air seemed to part, and the fabric of the world was twisted and gave way to darkness. Out came a smiling blond man with a bucket hat that cast a shadow over his eyes. Twirling a cane, he closed the portal behind him and observed his surroundings. I wonder how much time has passed since I was last here. He saw that a shrine had been erected in a clearing to his south, and as he got closer to it, it portrayed a fallen nine-tailed fox with a massive toad standing triumphant over it. Well, that wasn't what really happened. More correctly, it was Isshin and Yoruichi unleashing their Bankei, with me and Minato using the Hogyoku. Then again, we were not in our gi guys, so no one really saw what happened, besides one hell of a light show and a dying leader. He walked over to a seemingly random spot and approached an oddly shaped rock. He waved his hand and the rock changed back its true shape, which was a summoning stone he left before he opened a portal back to Soul Society. With one of these here, it will act as a waypoint so only I can get to this place. Urahara was rather jealous and protective of new findings, and he wasn't going to let some pesky underling come and take it away from him. He had the vague feeling that people who could channel chakra would be able to see his Shinigami self, if his theories about chakra were correct. But just to be safe, he came in a Gigai through the portal. Popping a Gikongan into his mouth, he left the medium and decided to enter the main village. Konoha, main city. What he saw did not really impress him. Whoa, if that's how they treat their heroes, I wonder how they treat their traitors. Better not ask. After following Naruto around during the day, he came to a few conclusions. The first was that this village was expressing its gratitude to the blonde container in a very cruel manner reminiscent of Spartan days. The second was that there were a few things wrong with Naruto. The first was that he did not seem to be as healthy as a boy his age should have been. His height and weight were way below the average, and it seemed as if his clothes had not been washed for a while, like he slept in them. The second one was that he could not detect any Ryotsu from him. Well, more correctly, it was there, but it was very much diminished from the night of the ceiling. It was a wonder that the Kyuubi's chakra was actually balanced at all. The closer he looked, the more he realized that there was a problem. The Ryotsu wasn't actually exerting enough pressure on the foreign chakra. This was bad, really bad. He needed to see someone in charge, otherwise in under a year they would be dealing with one hell of a pissed-off demon with an axe to grind. And after seeing the state of Naruto's treatment, he wasn't so inclined to help out next time. Konoha, Hokage's office. Retrieving his Gigai, Urahara decided that he needed to make a good impression on the leader. After making some small talk with the villagers, he determined that the leader was the Sandame and that his office was located in the Hokage Tower. Thinking of the best way to convince him that he was a Shinigami, he decided that a flashy entrance was in order. A flashy entrance. How would Kyoraku Shunsui do this? The Sandame was sitting at his desk, going through all the administrative paperwork that plague bureaucracies across time and space. Requisitions, approvals, license dispensations, all of it was enough to give him a headache. As he was about to reach a new drawer, he felt a disturbance in the center of his office. Looking up, he saw an odd sight. Two sparks of light appeared in the middle of the room, before they moved in opposite directions, leaving a trail of light and traced a circle that was suspended in air. The space inside the circle started to shimmer and disappear, before there was a strong wind that blew outwards. Sakura petals then flew from that void and fluttered everywhere, creating a mess, before a blonde-haired Shinigami came out twirling a cane in his hand. Crap, the petals were supposed to gently flow behind me after I entered the room. And float in the air as well. Maybe I should ask Kuchiki Byakuya how he does it. Sarutobi didn't know whether to feel amused at the sight in front of him or alarmed that someone had penetrated the seals that should have prevented people from entering his office unharmed. Though he had to admit, there was an element of style in such an entrance. Well, that's not something I have ever seen before. Who might you be? Sarutobi said with a calm voice, though he discreetly moved his hand to a panic button that would have summoned Anbu immediately if the blonde proved to be a threat. Kazuki produced a fan and gave a small laugh. Oh, I'm just a handsome and perverted scientist that has a few things to discuss with you. The Sandame was not impressed. It was a long day, and having a stranger just portal into his office to speak nonsense was not something he was looking forward to. What the hell is a scientist? Orochimaru. You know, entering into my office unannounced and without reason gives me enough cause to arrest and detain you, until I have a certain someone from the torture and interrogation division come and have a chat, he said in a dry voice. He hadn't lived this long by being foolhardy, and he rarely underestimated people. Kazuki chuckled before smirking. You have nothing to worry about from me. If I wanted to do you harm, would I really have done such an elaborate entrance? Sarutobi had to concede that point. So then, who are you and what do you want? The blonde took off his hat with a flourish and gave a slight bow. Well, first things first. My name is Urahara Kazuki. I'm also a Shinigami. The old man tensed at those words. Was that some kind of implied threat? Seeing the reaction at his words, Kazuki laughed and continued. No, I'm not here to kill you, or deliver your soul, or whatever it is that you think Shinigami do. But we do have a mutual problem that needs to be dealt with. He's blonde, about 5 to 6 years old, has a demon fox sealed into him. You know who I'm talking about, he drawled laconically. How do you know about the sealing? That is considered to be an S-class secret of this village, Sarutobi asked with suspicion in his voice. Urahara gave a slight smile and replied, Why, I was there when it happened. In fact, you can thank me for what occurred that night. He then proceeded to explain what actually happened on the night, where the sealing went wrong and how Naruto was transformed into something unexpected. The Sandame ran the thoughts in his head. It all made logical sense, though there were parts where he wanted more clarification on. Specifically the process that changed Naruto with that black sphere. The old man stroked his beard before nodding thoughtfully. Well, that's a better explanation than what Minato left us in his letter, but I will need some verification of the truth. How about this? Asked Urahara, reaching into his robes to take out kunai. Giving it a twirl, he came forward and dropped it on the desk. The Sandame would have recognized it anywhere. Anyone familiar with it would have as well by sight alone. It was a 3-tipped kunai laced with a seal array, the vital component of a jutsu that could decimate an entire battalion in mere moments. A part of what made Namikaze Minato a legend. Hiraishin no Jutsu, the technique that was the signature move of only one person. During the Third Shinobi War, Iwa placed huge bounties on those kunai, but they were jealously and effectively protected by the Fourth. In fact, after the battle with the Kyuubi, there were desperate attempts by the Anbu to retrieve all of them, lest they were sold and the seal deconstructed by a Fuinjutsu master. It was not a risk Konoha was willing to take. After the cleanup efforts were conducted, they thought that they had retrieved the complete set. But here was another one. And it was not just any kunai, it was the original one that Minato slaved over until he perfected his jutsu. He never used it in combat, and every other kunai he used from then on was a copy of that original. It was thought that it was hidden away in a sealed vault in the Namikaze estate. But here it lay on the Hokage's desk. With a dry mouth at seeing the invaluable treasure, he took it in his hand and looked at Urahara in the eyes. Okay, I believe you. I doubt you would have given me this if you were not telling the truth. At that, Kazuki gave an enigmatic smile. While the Hiraishin no Jutsu was impressive, he rather preferred the Shunpo technique used by the Shinigami. Sure, the Hiraishin might be faster, but you were dependent on those kunai, and it wasn't worth the effort to replicate the damn things. His portals handled long-range transportation after all. Well, we have much to talk about. Let's start off with why Naruto is treated like a leper. Before all of this, the blonde Shinigami was speaking in a light-hearted voice, but his voice suddenly hardened. There was no doubt that the transition into seriousness meant business. The Sandame explained everything to him. It was funny in a way, when it all came out and examined objectively, how stupid the situation was. But still, Kazuki was hardly impressed. Okay, I guess bits of it were understandable. Since Naruto survived the sealing, which wasn't really expected, the villagers believed that something went wrong and that the fox didn't die along with him? Well yes, that's pretty much it, admitted Sarutobi. Urahara winced at the perverse situation before sighing. Who would have thought that surviving a suicide technique would come to this, but nonetheless. Does he know that the fox is within him? The Hokage shook his head emphatically. No, he doesn't. I don't think that it is something that he is ready to learn at this moment in time. To prevent others from doing it, I passed a law with my emergency powers to make it a crime for others to reveal the Kyuubi's existence in Naruto to anyone. Though made with good intentions, the main reason why the council agreed with it was that they didn't want the other villages to know of the Jinchuriki's existence. If that power was ever turned against Konoha, Kazuki appreciated that gesture, but to him it was still unacceptable, but that doesn't explain why they would try and harm him. If they think that he is the fox, wouldn't they want to placate and make him loyal to your village? Hearing it being said so bluntly and logically, the old man shook his head sorrowfully, which comes down to the heart of it. They are so blinded by their hatred and fear of the unknown that they would rather kill him than consider the problem rationally. It's like some sort of mass hysteria, but no one seems to willing to listen to reason. Changing the hearts of others, it's a hard task. Urahara lowered his head until his eyes were shadowed. What? Are you telling me that your villagers would plan the death of a small child? He is the only thing that is keeping that fox at bay. I have a few of my dignitary protection Anbu looking after him to prevent any overt attempts. Wait, what do you mean by your last sentence? Asked the suddenly alarmed shinobi. The Shinigami gave a sigh. The truth was rarely pleasant, even less so in this case. He explained that if Naruto dies at this moment in time, or in the near future, the Biju would be released from its physical medium. The seal that Minato managed to graft on Naruto was never planned to hold the Kyuubi, but was to keep the Ryotsu and chakra in balance with each other. This balance would prevent the Kyuubi from forcibly escaping the medium that it was trapped within. He theorized that given enough time, Naruto's Ryotsu would reach a level that would dominate over the foreign chakra so that the Kyuubi would be sealed until his natural death. When that happened, well, he didn't seem to know, but that was a question left for another time. A human Shinigami might prove to live indefinitely. The more important and pressing issue was that the Ryotsu wasn't exerting sufficient pressure to keep the balance. Noting a few inconsistencies with the explanation, he asked another question, and another thing, where the hell is his mother? And that led to another sorry tale. Kazuki was left with shock at how bad life could get for some people. Hell, there were less deserving people living better lives than Naruto. He was not impressed with the situation and made that awfully clear to the Hokage. You know, for the supposed military leader of a shinobi village, you don't seem to be doing much for his well-being, the accusation crystal clear in his voice. Sarutobi gave a bitter laugh and walked over to his window. He gazed out into the village that he served for so long and clenched his fists. Don't think that I would have left him to suffer if I could have done anything about it. Minato was loved by all of us. He would have been ashamed to see this all happen. But what is done, and things have only turned out this way after Kushina left. Turning slowly back to face Kazuki, he ran his fingers through the remains of his hair and sighed. The point is that after the rampage, we had to rebuild. Never had we suffered such a loss close to home. As a part of rebuilding, power was transferred over to the civilian council. Everywhere we looked, enemies seemed to be looking at us, seeing if we were weak enough to attack. Iwa looked murderous, along with Kumo. Even Suna was looking at us like wounded prey. We needed to rebuild the infrastructure and the economy. If we could attract more people to live in Konoha, we could repopulate our forces. Naruto had his mother to protect him, and normally that would have been enough. But that's the point, she is as good as dead now, retorted Kazuki in exasperation. The Sandaime hesitated before agreeing. True, but to repopulate our forces, we would need at least 18 years before the next generation could rise up and do the job. With all the uncertainty over the seal, I just couldn't risk a civil war to give Naruto any more protection than he already had. Even now, Danzo is calling for me to give the child over. And the council just may well give in to that. Kazuki shook his head in disgust before narrowing his eyes once more. Look, I don't care about your internal politics. I really don't. All I see is that your power is slowly being eroded away, and you are avoiding the issue and trying to take the responsibility off your hands by not doing anything. Enough of that, we need solutions. Well, the fact is that I have control over shinobi affairs, but Naruto is not a shinobi. Why doesn't he become a shinobi? Make him one. He is too young at the moment, and he requires the consent of his mother, who is missing at the moment. I can give my permission in her place, but... The Shinigami felt somewhat offended at the hesitation. He is not going to be left like he is, damn it. He deserves better, and if you fail him, then the entire village will pay for it. Everything that Urahara had said to him was true. He was getting along the years, and he had let too much slide during his tenure. Thinking back, if it became a contest of wills between him and the council, he doubted that they wouldn't back down. They needed his experience, but his tendency to try and placate them was misguided. While he was a firm advocate of peace, as a shinobi he knew that some things could never be settled by reason alone. A step had to be taken, a line drawn. And thankfully Kazuki was there to open his eyes. Tell me what needs to be done. Sarutobi said this with a reawakened fire in his eyes. Urahara was surprised at this sudden spark, and more pleased than anyone else. His first impressions were of an old man being burdened, giving more and more ground until he had nothing left to give. But this was a start. It may only be an ember, but if this wall of fire was to be something more than a metaphor, then it all had to start somewhere. He will need training. He will need to be cared for so that his body can handle the strain of all the energy in him. Most of all, he needs to be happy. If he is left in the darkness, well, people become the things that we create. Right now, he has the potential in him to be one of the strongest beings in your land. Give him enough reason and he could turn on you and it would not be pretty. Thinking on it, if Naruto were to die right now, he would not be inclined to seal the fox again. If this was going to be the standard response, then he would have nothing of it. But if he were to survive and awaken all of his latent powers, Naruto might be a match for even Yamamoto Sotecho and a few Taiko of the Gode 13. Such power was unbelievable, but it was made possible by him. He didn't know if to be happy or afraid at that though. That much power needs restraint. And that is something he will need to learn now. Does Naruto know who his father is? He asked with curiosity. No, he doesn't. Why didn't you tell him? Or his mother? Sarutobi laughed with little humor, too many reasons to list. While many people know that he is the container, his parentage was only known to me and a few others present at the scene of the sealing. His father had many enemies who would have loved to torture and kill the son of their hated enemy. In time, I will tell him the truth. Kazuki shrugged before continuing. I don't necessarily agree with you there, and keeping secrets will just push him away from you. That's the last thing that you need, old man. Before he can reclaim his legacy, he needs to be able to protect himself and the ones around him. I cannot let him become an even bigger target to the world before he is ready, justified the Hokage, unfazed by the snipe at his age. Urahara left it at that. At least there was reason behind that. He wasn't so sure that Naruto didn't know, or had an idea of what was going on around him. The fact that he bore an uncanny resemblance to the fourth would have alerted most people. Deciding that it wasn't an issue he had to deal with, he moved on. I have something for Naruto. It's something that all Shinigami have, and some consider it to be the source of their power. It should create a connection to his Ryotsu, and strengthen it. What is it exactly? Kazuki withdrew a bag off his shoulder, placed it on the floor and drew a long oblong package wrapped in silk from within. Unwrapping it, he unveiled a fairly ordinary-looking katana. Expecting something more impressive, the Sandaime looked expectantly at him. Compelled to give an explanation, he obliged. This is a Zanpakuto. It's the spiritual weapon used by all Shinigami. It's more of a blank than anything else right now, but once a connection is forged, it becomes a part of a Shinigami's soul. Think of it as a nexus. Not wanting to get engaged in a philosophical question that still plagued academics, he decided to continue. The point is, the more he trains with it, the stronger his Ryotsu becomes. So he will need a blade master to teach him the basics before he unseals the true form of his blade. His true form? It's not something you need to worry about now. It won't happen for at least a few more years. Just make sure that he is happy, well-fed and well-trained. I'll be watching to make sure things are done properly, and if not, well, you all will be the ones to suffer the consequences, promised the blonde. Not for the last time, Sarutobi cursed at the position of being Hokage. But behind that all, he was inwardly happy that he could finally do some good. It took the intervention of a death god, granted, but the determination in his eyes was unmistakable. Konoha, Hokage's office. Gecko Hayate was waiting outside the Hokage's office after receiving a summon delivered by a Chunin. He spoke to the secretary, who told him that the sandaime was with someone else and he would just need to wait a short while. Nodding to that, he walked over to the seating area before sitting down. To most people, Hayate did not seem to be the textbook picture of what a shinobi should be. With bags under his eyes and a perpetual cough, you could be forgiven for thinking that his position was either a political favor, or a mistake yet to be corrected by the Darwinian world that the shinobi lived in. But behind that seemingly frail body laid a prodigy of the blade. While Konoha did not have a tradition of swordsmanship like Kirigakure, the few who managed to excel were regarded quite highly, enough to be placed on the bingo book of other nations, if only as a curiosity. Hayate was regarded as one of Konoha's Kengos, and if his health was any better then he would have been titled a Kensei. As he sat back, he wondered why the Hokage wished to see him. He knew that he hadn't committed any crimes, or had done anything that merited a dressing down by the village's military leader. One does not ignore a request from the Hokage for a talk, not unless you wanted to be dragged against your will by the Anbu, who didn't take to such duties with much amusement. Though as he was here, he had to ponder about what he wanted to do for the rest of his life. His sword skills were beyond reproach, and having achieved it by the age of 16 was quite an accomplishment. Though compared to such prodigies such as Hitaki Kakashi and Uchiha Itachi, he realized that he had specialized too much, and he was now stuck in a rut. Due to his health, he couldn't really take on stealth or reconnaissance missions. His cough would give away his position, and he didn't have the stamina to lead assaults, nor the endurance to take on enemies for prolonged melees. Oddly, being a ninja does not really rely on using a sword. Information gathering, spying, intelligence and assassination was the name of the game. Using jutsus just enhanced a shinobi's repertoire of skills to get the job done. That's not to discount his skills short. If it ever got to a close combat with another shinobi, a swordsman would usually win against his opponent. Hayate's signature style, the dance of the crescent moons, was capable of taking out opponents with extreme speed and accuracy. Once the distance is closed, there is no time for hand seals or chakra molding. Since most ninjas only seem to carry kunai as their melee weapon, up against a katana there really is no contest. Since his promotion to Chunin, he hadn't really been on many missions of note, and it seemed that his career may have already stalled. Maybe I could be a Junin instructor, he mused, though the likelihood of that was quite low. Not for the first time he cursed his ill health. It was some defect in his lungs that caused them to contract too quickly, making breathing difficult. Caught in his thoughts, he didn't notice another person sit right next to him. Azuki Yugo was another promising young Chunin on the road to bigger and better things. She had recently applied for a position in the Anbu, and hoped that this meeting would be confirmation of that. Finally, I can do it and show them what I am capable of. The sad fact is that the culture of shinobis was male-dominated and orientated. Most kunoichi were not taken seriously. This was not helped by the fact that some girls only took the position as it seemed like a glamorous occupation, full of noble and heroic adventures. Or to get closer to a boy. While sometimes those missions came up, most of the time it involved dirty work that no one else wanted to do. Having their fantasies shredded up meant a high turnover rate, especially the nature of the physically demanding rate that most males could keep up with. But remembering that a ninja specializes in stealth and evasion, it was a role that suited kunoichi quite well. Their small size, speed and agility were greater than their male counterparts, and they could do a job as effectively, if not more so than a man. It was this ingrained discrimination that many kunoichi fought against. Throughout the academy, and during the genin years, Yugo always felt that she had something to prove. Instead of making her bitter about it, she used it as motivation to reach greater heights. In a few short years, she managed to surpass her teammates, and there were rumors that she was being shortlisted for the Anbu program in a few years. At the moment she was on some mandatory leave and working on a few new jutsus she had managed to borrow from a few Junin instructors. As she sat down, she noticed the person sitting next to her. I have seen him around somewhere, wait, so it is him. Hayate noticed that her eyes widened in recognition and he wondered how she would react. Not everyone took to prodigies well, bringing forth feelings of resentment and jealousy. Yugo merely gave him a cocky smirk before deliberately looking away from him. Well, that's a new one, thought Hayate. I usually get fawning, requests for a spar, or snide comments. Being ignored, not sure how to feel about that. The kunoichi next to him didn't really feel any disdain towards the gray-haired swordsman. She had long discovered that blind prejudices could get a woman killed, and tried to approach things with an open mind. But that didn't mean that she wouldn't enjoy messing around with him. So the two of them sat next to each other, each playing a game to see if the other would initiate conversation. Minutes slowly dragged out, and neither of them was quite ready to break it until the other did. Luckily for both of them, the Hokage's door opened and out stormed a black-robed figure with an icy expression on his face. He looked at both of them before dismissing them and headed towards the exit. They could not help but notice how scarred the man looked. Before they could ponder it too deeply, they were invited into the office and they quickly entered. They both gave the village leader a salute before standing at attention. As Chunin, they didn't really have much interaction with the Hokage, beyond the allocation of missions. This was something new, and both of them wanted to make a good impression. The Sandame had a bitter expression on his face, and was twirling a fountain pen as he gazed off into space. That could have gone better, and there are too many questions left open. Seeing that his silence was making the two nervous, he gave a small sigh and smile. "Stand easy the two of you and take a seat. I guess you are wondering why I called you here today. This village needs you to serve it," spoke Sarutobi in a grave voice. The two in question looked at each other in surprise. The Hokage ignored it and continued. "Some things will be revealed to you. These are secrets that are S-classed in nature. Once you hear them, a mission will be assigned to the two of you. It will be a prolonged assignment and will be one of the most important missions ever taken in Konoha. Before I can go forward, I need for you to make a commitment." While the Sandane could have easily ordered them to comply, he always felt that compulsion made for poor results. If they were willing and able to take on the mission, it would only mean better outcomes in the end. Yugo slowly raised her hand and asked a question. "What sort of commitment are you looking for, Hokage-sama?" He closed his eyes in thought before answering, "At least 6 years from now. A ranked status, with all the pay and benefits attached." She raised her eyebrows in surprise. Most Chunin never took on missions above B. Even if they did, it was usually completed as part of a full cell. For protocol to be broken in this case, it had to be something special. While Hayate was still processing the information, Yugo decided to press the initiative. "I accept, Hokage-sama." While the two males looked at her with some surprise, it really was a no-brainer for the kunoichi. She didn't reach her position by being timid. She knew what she wanted, and took the chances that were open to her. This was one hell of a chance to prove herself to her superiors, and would only help her chances of entering into the Anbu. She was confident that she had the skills to back up whatever needed to be done. Hayate was feeling a bit abashed that Yugo accepted so quickly. Looking at his options, he realized that he was at a plateau, and needed some direction in his life. "Oh, why the hell not? My friends keep telling me to expand my horizons. And I'll be damned if I'm going to back down to her. I accept the assignment as well." Hayate ended that with a small bow of his head. While he was slightly surprised that they accepted without more clarification, Sarutobi was very pleased to see such fire in his subordinates. "Very well, let me tell you a story. It all began on a summer's night. Konoha, Naruto's apartment. As Naruto was about to enter into his home, he realized something was a bit off. 1. His door was left unlocked. 2. There were sakura petals all over his floor. 3. There was a blonde-haired man sitting on his couch. Narrowing his eyes, he looked at his door to double-check that he had the right apartment. "Okay, so this is my house, and I don't know this guy. What the hell?" Kazuki gave the other blonde a smile and said, "Relax, Naruto-kun. If I wanted to hurt you, wouldn't I have done that already instead of sitting on your couch?" While that did make some sense, it wasn't proof, and could just be a part of a plan to lure him into a false sense of security. Urahara saw that the boy was edging away from him, and was about to make a run for it. Deciding that he needed to cut that short, he made a bit of a gamble. "Do you ever wonder why your body isn't as healthy as it used to be? Why you have trouble breathing? Why things don't look as sharp as they used to? Why your headaches are getting worse and worse?" he asked candidly. Naruto was surprised. While others didn't really care or notice that his health was failing, he always tried to cover it up. Letting others know of his self-perceived weakness was something that he loathed, and he took steps to cover it up. It looks like he didn't do a good enough job. Then again, it's not like the doctors would do much for me in the hospital anyways. But the fact that someone was looking out for him and observed it gave him some pause. Maybe I can trust this man, though I will have to get him to clean my floors. I'm pretty sure I don't have a sakura tree in my house. Seeing that his words were having an effect, Urahara gave an open smile. My name is Urahara Kazuki. If you come in, I can explain a bit more about what is happening to you. Naruto blinked before deadpanning. That's nice of you to invite me into my own house. Giving the boy an embarrassed laugh while rubbing the back of his head, he replied apologetically, oh yeah, I'm sorry about that, but I really needed to speak to you, and I couldn't really wait outside your door. You do get quite a few visitors, he finished darkly. With a grimace, Naruto closed the door and sat down on the floor, looking up Urahara. There was a silence as both of them looked at each other. Kazuki noticed the strain in the other's eyes, and the fact that he placed a lot of effort in keeping his body upright. This impressed him. He was just a 6-year-old kid for crying out loud. He should be playing with his friends, running around and making a nuisance for his parents to sigh over. Damn, he shoulders this burden well. But then again, he didn't really choose this in the first place. That was part of the reason why he chose to explain everything to Naruto about the ceiling and the consequences. Who his father was, well, that was something that he would leave in the hands of the Sandaime. After hearing all of it, Naruto didn't know what to believe. It sounded all so fantastical and ludicrous, like a piece of fiction or a manga series, but it all seemed to make horrible, terrible sense. It explained nearly everything, and for the first time in his life, his eyes were open to the truth. Unfortunately, this just raised more questions in his head. Is this why Ka-san left? Doesn't anyone know who my father is? I mean, anyone? Am I really the demon that they all say that I am? But the more pressing question left him feeling more afraid. Am I going to die? While he didn't exactly have a great life, he didn't want to die just yet. There was so much he wanted to do, see and experience. This isn't fair. He railed in his head, it can't end like this, it just can't. I never even had the chance. Seeing his face give into despair, Kazuki quickly intervened. There is a way to fix this problem of yours. That quickly brought Naruto out of his depression and he eagerly yelled out, alright. What do I need to do then? The other blonde simply took out a sheathed katana and held it out to him. Touch this and all will be revealed, he answered rather mysteriously. Grabbing the sheath, he looked at it with a smile on his face. It was a simple katana, unadorned with any decoration. Its guard was a simple piece of steel, with the hilt wrapped in sharkskin. Its sheath was made of black lacquered wood. It looked rather unassuming. Looking at Kazuki for confirmation, he slowly unsheathed the blade. The blade was a rather simple affair. With a length of 1 meter, it was simple but precisely forged. Admiring its beauty, he couldn't help but notice the fine grain of the steel, the result of it being folded over many times until it had a slight rippled surface. For some reason that he could not explain, the blade just felt right in his hands. It was like he was reunited with something that was missing from him that he never knew about. As he was about to give it an experimental swing, something happened. Something unexpected. Naruto's body seized up and slowly folded into itself. His eyes glazed over and his face went slack. Urahara quickly flash-stepped to catch Naruto before he fell and cut himself with the blade. As he held onto the comatose boy, he was wide-eyed and was using his Ryotsu to see if he was injured. What the hell? What just happened? No one has ever had a reaction like this just by drawing out a blank Zanpakuto. There are no obvious wounds, no trace of poison or any other substances. Am I too late? Is the damned fox taking over? As Kazuki was running scenarios in his head, Naruto found himself in a very odd place. It looked like he was in the main streets of Konoha. It was daytime and a slight breeze was blowing against his face. But there were a few things odd about the picture. It was midday and the streets were completely empty. He was dressed in black robes that he did not own. He was also pretty sure that he was in his apartment just a few moments ago and he had a sword. Scrunching his face in thought, trying to process what was actually happening to him, he failed to notice a figure approach him from the end of the street. In fact, the only reason he noticed the figure was because its shadow washed over his face. The figure gave a light lilting laugh before it spoke in a haunting, melodious voice. Isn't this a surprise? I wonder what you did to cause all this to happen. But I must say it's much better than where I was staying before. Thanks for that. Naruto was too confused to actually make a response. The other seemed to be amused by his silence. What's the matter? Fox got your tongue, Kit? The comment was directed at no one, being almost rhetorical, if the place where she was were truly empty of anything. The landscape around her was slowly being torn apart and she could not help but feel slightly anxious about this new change. This was beyond her range of experience and the uncertainty gnawed at her. It was truly a new feeling that was entirely unwelcome for the millennia-old demon. Well, I can only hope that I end up in a nicer place than this sewer. Honestly, who imagines the center of their soul or unconsciousness as a damn cesspit? The said sewer collapsed into itself, coalescing into a singularity that pulled her into its grasp. She struggled against it, as she was drifting towards its center, but her efforts were doomed from the start. As this was happening, she could not help but reflect on the events that brought her to these events. When you have spent the majority of your life as a titanic fox demon, your perspective of things is forever changed. One is that you dismiss things smaller than you. Hell, that is entirely understandable. It's not like an ant can stand up to the might of an elephant, can it? But such feelings of invulnerability were shattered during one summer night in what would be known as the fall. The rampage onto that impertinent village started off so well. People were fleeing before her wrath, death and destruction littered the air in the throes of her carnage. I mean really, what could they have possibly done to her? Seal you into the body of an infant not quite 1 day old? Madness. But it happened. She was brought low. Even when she was up against the black-robed enigmas, she was more curious than afraid. When she felt the power that the three of them were emitting, she got concerned. It was something that was unfamiliar, a new feeling. She was getting hurt as time got along, but she was fairly sure that she could have dealt with them as they stood against her. It all changed when the man and woman in black started screaming words that caused their power levels to explode to unimaginable levels. The foreign energy they wielded into attacks was now potentially lethal instead of an irritant. They cut into her physical medium, the layers of protection being flayed away like it was butter under a hot knife. Deciding to pull back and observe or withdraw, the unthinkable had occurred. The combined attack managed to cleave her medium into two. Her soul exposed, she tried to get out as soon as she could, but an immense spiritual pressure pushed her soul into that of a boy. A frail mortal body of a boy. This was intolerable. She, the greatest of the Biju, the ruler of the Makai, in her mind at least, was trapped. Those bastards are going to pay, she thought spitefully. And the interest owing is going to be a killer. What followed was one of the most interesting 6 years of a life to a person who measured things in centuries. Railing at the loss of her freedom, she sat back and observed in the comfort of the sewer that was to be her home. While she absolutely detested her surroundings, and vowed to do some interesting things to the people involved, the events that followed after the sealing made for some interesting drama. And she got to experience it all in an odd sense of vicarious liability. It wasn't like Biju hadn't been sealed into human hosts before. They were usually strong human beings that could handle the unique chakra molded by a demon. But her chakra levels were immense, and no one human could handle it before their cells overloaded. Premature death and the escape of an angry-tailed demon was the fate that awaited such vessels. The Gaki should have died, if not at the sealing, then now. Then again, I'm not sure that he is even human anymore. The strange energy coursed through the blonde's body when he was younger, and nearly suffocated her at times. Like a current that knew no master, it raged and fought against her chakra in a vicious struggle. The energy was nothing that I have ever seen before in a human. It is almost opposite to chakra. At first the energy was exerting sufficient pressure to suppress her chakra into submission. Constantly pushing for dominance, it was a one-sided battle that she wasn't winning. She had no idea why that was the case, but as the years went by, the pressure lost its efficacy and subsided. Slowly but surely she managed to push back and win. It got to the stage where she could escape and reform a medium if she really made the effort. But she didn't. She needed more time to achieve dominance, and wanted to study the strange power used against her. I will not let them use that against me another time. Furthermore, she was genuinely, some would say morbidly, fascinated by Naruto and his life, particularly the red-headed woman that he called Mother. Thanks to the increased control of her chakra, she could access his latent chakra points and have a limited perception of the world around her host. When the boy was sleeping, she remembered the nights when the woman would come in with a kunai in hand. Part of her was sickened and amused by this. While many people would claim that the tailed demons were evil beasts, the truth was that they were more amoral than anything else. Sure, they didn't place a high value on human life, but it wasn't like others didn't do the same. Humans kill each other more regularly and in greater numbers than I ever did, and they call us demons? We, at least I, have just cause. But there were a few things that she would not stand for. Betrayal first and foremost. Kin slaying came a close second. As the knife got progressively closer to the boy's chest, she could not help but feel conflicted. Part of her was happy that her freedom was nearly at hand. Part of her was outraged that it was to be by that act. She was going to rip herself out of the blonde anyways, but it was to be by her hand, not any other. Though the Gaki was pretty innocent in all of this, it wasn't like the world treats its people kindly. But something she would not forget or forgive was the treatment that her host had suffered. How dare they disrespect those with more power than they? Such slights were not something that she took lightly, and she imprinted their faces into her memory. They will pay, one way or another. But the host's body still continued to break down. It was partially the result of her increased control and the demonic chakra coursing through the pathways. Naruto would have died early if a certain black-robed blonde had not reappeared into the scene. As she heard the explanation, she felt some fear when the sword was offered to Naruto. She desperately tried to take control of her medium's body, causing it to contract, but contact was made. This brought her to her current situation as the world around her was pulled apart. Goodbye sewer, I wish I could say that I wish you well, but I can't. Somewhere, the world around her was dark. Not the darkness that occurs at night, but the true darkness that meant the absence of light. Yet oddly enough, she could see certain things around her, as if they emitted light that was beyond the range of the absorption of the surroundings. One of those things was a stranger that was gliding towards her. Why is it that all the weird shit that happens to me comes in black packages? As the figure got closer, she could see that it was androgynous and had a faint smirk on its face. It stayed silent before its expression turned into one of contemplation. Who the hell are you and where is this place? The Kyuubi demanded. Who am I? The question reverberated around the darkness. The question that it asked seemed to have a haunting quality to it. Isn't that the question? Truly, I'm not sure, but then again, do you know who you are? Great, I'm stuck in this hole with a philosopher. What did I do to deserve this? Oh yeah, all that indiscriminate killing. Anyways, even if I told you my name, I'm not too sure that you would be able to hear it. The fox demon scoffed at that. Try me. I am the heart and the soul, part of the fate that all things meet and share, part of this grand cycle that binds existence together. The Kyuubi rolled her eyes. How cryptic. I wonder if it even knows what it is, if it needs to hide itself under misdirection and obfuscation. She decided to give a flippant reply. Let me guess, taxes? Puberty? Death? I will let you know that I hate taxmen. Puberty is a distant and probably non-existent memory and I'm not dead yet. I am the latter. Right, sure you are. The disbelieving tone was obvious. This thing calls itself death? Geez, that's awfully presumptuous. Last time I checked the Shinigami held that post, and not very well either. The figure saw her disbelief but ignored it and continued. What I am is unimportant. Who you are and what you can do is the issue at the moment. Explain. Well, you might have noticed that your soul is stuck in the body of a child, it commented dryly. Really? I never really noticed, she drawled. Yes. Ignoring the heavy sarcasm, it nodded indulgently before speaking. Normally, the kid would keep you sealed away until his death, but that seems unlikely now. Why's that? It chuckled before taking a lecturing tone. The Gaki somehow crossed the bridge between the living and the dead. What the hell actually happened is anyone's guess, but a living Shinigami is probably the best way to describe what he has actually become. The point is that he will not die anytime soon. Maybe never. His healing factor is quite formidable, now that he has access to Ryotsu and your powers as well. Ryotsu, is that the strange power that is binding me? You're wrong there. That little bastard has no access to my powers. It is mine, and I'll be damned if I will give my power away, especially to my jailer. The figure gave a small shrug and smirked. Who said you had a choice? Konoha, Hokage's office. As Naruto was convulsing on his apartment floor, the Sandame finished outlining the assignment to the two Chunin in front of him. So you want us to become his teachers and tutors? Asked Hayate. The Sandaime nodded but continued, that is just part of it. The most important part is that you become his mentors in the truest sense of the word. Naruto has the potential to become a great force in our world. Now that was the understatement of the century. With his power, any nation would love to wield it. If he ever defects, was the thought on everyone's mind. Speaking softly, he looked solemnly at them and spoke from his heart, but if he continues down this path of loneliness and rejection, if his anger is ever directed at us. That line of thought was left unspoken. If they ever tried to neutralize the boy, they would end up dying. If they treated him harshly, then they would arise at the same result. The entire generation that controlled power in Konoha would not see the truth easily in any event. Why would you alienate a potential weapon or ally? That was something that Sarutobi had to push forward to the council. But he could already foresee the difficulties in convincing them of that. Yugo decided to ask a question. How classified is this mission? I don't think that this will be something that we can tell our friends or our family. Sarutobi sighed before responding. I will do what I can to change the perceptions on my end. We cannot allow this information to become open. Many will target Naruto and that is something we need to avoid. Iwa is still baying for any chance of revenge, and others will want to turn him against us, or kill him to deny us his abilities. Either option leads to more death. I have told you what needs to be done. How you do so is up to you. Hayate remembered something that soured him. Where is Kushina now? That was another sore point in this sorry tale that continued to fester. She was never a Konoha nin and was not as such subject to their jurisdiction. She was an observer, attached to Minato, about to be granted permanent residency when the Biju attacked. Their leader was silent for a moment before speaking up. The thing is that she was never one of ours. Her name was never registered as a Konoha shinobi. A shinobi can only owe allegiance to one village. Divided loyalties are never something that a military village can tolerate. The potential for secrets to be exposed is too high. Yugo blinked, trying to accept that before asking a question. How about defectors? What nation did she belong to in the first place? Kushina was effectively stateless as Uzu no Kuni doesn't exist anymore. And she wasn't a defector in any event. They spend 6 months being interrogated before being placed on probation. Everyone uses double agents, and keep the counterintelligence Enbu busy. They were digesting that bit of little-known information as Sarutobi rubbed his forehead in exasperation. Since I have no jurisdiction to declare her a missing nin, there is not much officially that I can do besides putting a bounty on her head. That is not something that I wish to do right now. But her association with Minato meant that she was privy to many of his secrets. In particular the Hiraishin. I had the Blackguard Anbu and Jiraiya-san look for her, but they found nothing so far. Both Chunin looked at each other. Did she disappear and remain hidden from us? How did she do that? Jiraiya-sama's spy network is the best in the elemental nations. She must have gone deep underground, thought Hayate. Yugo had darker thoughts. Maybe she defected to another village. God knows any of them would be willing to take her in. She is a goldmine of information. If she has gone to ground, then lots of digging will be necessary. She dared to voice her thoughts. Asylum in another village? Possibly, conceded the old man, keeping his cards close to his chest. He shook his head before directing them back to their current problem. In any event, reaching out to Naruto will be more difficult than usual. To put it mildly, he has abandonment issues, and will be reluctant to let people in for fear of getting hurt and left alone again. But you need to do your best. No, you need to succeed. I'm sure you see the importance of this mission now. They both did, but for slightly different reasons. Hayate felt pity for the boy. His ill health had always left him isolated from the others. Sitting on the sidelines, watching inwards as the others around him connected but leaving him on the outside, he could relate to Naruto. Hell, the boy suffered much more than he ever did. Yugo knew that this would lead to her break. Political connections could always grease the wheels, and there was no doubt that she had ambition in spades. Who else was more connected than the Hokage? In any event, Naruto was deserving of her help and she always wondered what it would be like having a younger brother. Things are looking interesting. Somewhere. I didn't live this long to lose my powers to a mere mortal. The being shook its head in annoyance. The mortal part is debatable, but really, don't make me force you. She gave a manic grin in return. I'd like to see you try. Unleashing 5 of her tails, she roared out and twisted her chakra into lances of coursing light towards the cloaked figure. It flashed out of sight, before suddenly delivering a stunning blow to her sternum. Slightly winded, she grabbed onto it with 3 tails and proceeded to beat it into submission. The figure just grunted and unleashed an enormous wave of pressure that made her recoil and broke her grasp. What the hell is this power, this Ryotsu? It hurts unlike anything that I have felt before. Damn, I underestimated this fox. That really hurt, more so than Ryotsu-based attacks. She could nearly key. Cutting its thoughts short, the Kyuubi decided to end it. Giving a smirk, it drew upon its reserves deep within her core. She poured out a wave of killing intent that would have given Cammy pause, if only for a moment, and began to unleash everything that she had. 9 tails of power erupted around her, sheathing her body in a crimson aura that danced like flames over her flawless skin. The aura darkened until the only features that could be seen were black slitted eyes, terrible in their malice. The whole scene was quite nightmarish as the two beings stood each other down. For the first time of the battle, the black-robed figure showed true fear. The level of power that the demon was emitting was unbelievable, unthinkable. It was even eroding the sealed space created by the Zanpakuto. This needs to end, right now. The Biju didn't give the other any time for reprieve before she struck. Damn, I haven't been able to let loose since the chaining, not even when I attacked Konoha did I go all out. With slight curve to her mouth that went unseen, she struck out faster than the mortal eye could register. Even faster than what an immortal eye could see for that fact. Just as fast as Shunpo? The other tried to flash step out of the way, but the Kyuubi saw all of its movements. This technique, it is just enhanced speed, not any sort of teleportation or phase space. It's impressive, sure, but it still is just physical movement. I can see all of it with my eyes. Every single step. You're mine now. She rushed forward, her power enhancing her muscles so that she was a blur of motion, all 9 tails extended and acting autonomously, like a whirlwind of activity that attacked and defended in tandem. While that was happening, she used her reserves and perfunctorily recompositioned her chakra into pure elemental fire. A searing balefire that managed to illuminate the void that they were in, casting an odd and ominous shadow that was sucked away into the background. Take this, you overconfident prick, she thought smugly. At point-blank range, the balefire crossed the distance in moments and scored a direct hit onto the other. The pain was indescribable, a wave of searing agony that lanced through its body. The heat was such that the wound was cauterized, leaving a trail of ozone and seared flesh. As the shadowed soul was dying, it was nevertheless impressed by the Kyuubi's strength. It had managed to exercise its power impressively, and had beat it in its own domain no less. But it was hardly finished. Zanpakutos were not called soul cutters for nothing. With a howl, Ryotsu was channeled into a narrow crescent laced with an indigo hue. Let's see how you are without that power. It extended from its arm like a blade, seemingly cutting the area around it into distorted patterns of space before it struck out. The Biju was caught too close to dodge the coronal wave that soared towards her, leaving afterimages in its wake. Trapped by proximity, she could do nothing but prepare herself for impact. Pain happened, a deep bone-jarring spike that seemed to erupt from her core and spread outwards. With growing horror, she felt her chakra ebbing away, like a dam placed over a current. It left her weak and disorientated when all 9 tails of power were suddenly taken away from her. She slumped over onto the ground, desperately trying to access what was hers, but to no avail. In a desperate rage, she rushed to the fallen figure and grabbed onto it, shaking it and demanding answers. What the hell did you do? I can't feel it anymore. Where did it go? Answer me, you bastard. The figure was in no better shape. The attack took more energy than it thought possible. Such power that she had, at most it achieved a Pyrrhic victory. Its awareness slowly drifted away. No, Naruto's soul cannot be left unguided. What to do? Desperation forced it to do the unthinkable. A soul meld. With a groan, it faced the hysterical demon and spoke softly. I have severed the part of your soul that acts as a bridge to your power. Your chakra is lost to you. That wasn't something that she wanted to hear. You lie, I can still feel it, but I just can't touch it anymore. Give it back, Yumi, now. She demanded. No, I won't. Even if I could, you don't deserve it. Deserve it? I earned it, it is mine. She demanded incredulously. The other just gave a shrug, which infuriated the demon fox. The Kyuubi growled. My power is still there, running wild in the medium. If it isn't controlled or given focus, it will ruin the body. On that thought she stopped. Left unchecked, Naruto would die by the raw fury of 9 tails of demonic chakra. Normally she would be freed, but with her soul butchered into tatters and her power inaccessible, she didn't know what would happen now. The uncertainty gnawed away at her. She just didn't know. Naruto has control of your power now. He may not be able to use it, but the two of you may come to an agreement. How the hell does he have my power? Another shrug, it's his body, and you're in it. It's pretty much his to do with as he likes. Privately, it wasn't so sure. Power usually recognized its rightful owner, but then again misdirection could be a wonderful thing at times. This thing wants me to negotiate for what is mine. She started to throttle the figure, shouting obscenities at it. No, you did this, you can undo it, damn it. Don't make me beat you until you do. Getting so close may not have been the smartest thing to do, especially when your power has been sealed away from you. The fallen figure grabbed onto her arms and channeled its remaining energy. Her soul was left butchered by its attack, and it began to merge its consciousness into her spirit. Such an act was considered heinous by the Shinigami, being too close to a hollow transmogrification to be comfortable done by Soul Society. Both souls started to fight for dominance, neither yielding to the other. The Biju was fueled by outrage and vitriol, the other by sheer necessity. So it was in this lightless hell that they fought for control. An eternity awaited them until one was triumphant over the other. Soul Society. 13 Division Headquarters. These errands are not what I imagined what a Fuku Taiko would be doing. Those were the thoughts running through Aizen Sosuke. Then again, I have been developing this mask for a reason, and this is one of the unfortunate side effects of the act. Oh well, let's see what the paranoid bastard wants with Urahara Taiko. Though to be honest, he had more than a passing curiosity at what the Research and Development Division did for Soul Society. Fascinated by the 4 aspects of Shinigami power, he could nonetheless see how such power could be refined into something useful. Something that might transcend the limits that the fools in Soul Society placed upon themselves. Kazuki certainly did do some remarkable things in order to make the Shinigami more versatile and powerful. Maybe there was a new breakthrough and he would be shown something interesting, instead of these old reports that needed to be confirmed by his Taiko. What a tragic waste of my time and talent. They, in their arrogance, think that the powers they use are the be-all and end-all of existence. It would be pathetic if it wasn't so sad. A whole realm of power lies beyond the limitations of the Shinigami, and none of them was willing to test their limits. Such potential wasted. With a slight grimace, he took off his spectacles and rubbed his temples. I hate wearing these glasses as well. It makes me look less threatening, but damn, they blur the light and pinch the bridge of my nose. He soon reached the entrance and was admitted with a salute. Giving a warm smile at the guards, he couldn't help but muse on the facade he had been creating for years. It makes my goals ever so much more achievable. Especially when people see Ichimaru Jin. Trust is such a fickle thing. When he reached Urahara's office he paused. What the? He saw 12 Giguys standing around arguing with each other. You do it. No you do it. Like hell I will. I created you, damn it. You're nothing but a clone. We all are, damn it. Well, this is interesting. I'm pretty sure they have a personality that was banned by Soul Society, at least ones that go beyond simple actions. What are you hiding, Urahara? Why do you need to shield your presence like this? If you went behind their backs to create these mod souls, what else have you been doing? Deciding that this bore closer investigation, he made his way to leave before making a mental note to make an ally out of someone in the division. He had a suspicion that something big was happening that warranted Kazuki to hide his presence. He really should have created a mod soul that was more discreet though, he thought wryly. Somewhere, the war for the soul brought up many memories that each figure faced in their darkness. For the Kyuubi, she remembered the parts of her life that shaped her to what she was today in no particular order. The fall, a vicious sense of dislocation and disruption that had no reason or logic. The chaining, when they learned from the sins committed against them to do the same against another. The path of hands, the reunification of the 9 that lead to a path that changed them into legends. The other remembered part of its life, of its purpose given to it by higher powers so that it could serve and bear witness. Bear witness to all that comes, and all that will come. The fight was on a level beyond normal comprehension. The black-robed figure had the advantage of using a power that had a purely spiritual basis, which admittedly could affect reality and would normally lead to victory. But the Kyuubi was an ancient soul, and the battle was being fought within itself. No matter how much power the other had, it paled in comparison to the experience of the Kyuubi. With that advantage, she overwhelmed the other's consciousness with a triumphant snarl. "Take that, bitch!" As she exulted in her success, she found herself being assaulted with images, thoughts, feelings, awareness, understanding. It was enough to make her collapse into a heap. The combined knowledge and sum of parts that a Zanpakuto possessed were being integrated into her very being, changing her into something else. In essence, an exchange of power was occurring. Her chakra was lost to her, but she was given something else to compensate for it. Konoha, Naruto's apartment. What the hell? Unaware of the similar thoughts that were running through the other's mind, Naruto looked around him. His surroundings were awfully familiar, like he was in Konoha in daytime. But it was awfully empty of any people. Bearing one figure that approached him. The thoughts going through Naruto's head were unusual, to say the least. She is so pretty, and with her red hair, she almost looks like Ka-san. While a 6-year-old would consider her to be pretty, someone older would describe her as attractive, beautiful, smoking hot, a fox, etc., while being unaware of the irony. The woman was tall and had long red flowing hair tied off into 9 ponytails, extending beyond her back. With porcelain fair skin and black eyes, she had a haunting beauty, like an unearthly being gracing the world with her presence. Topped off by a curvaceous yet lean figure, she was undeniably female, radiating an aura of earthly sensuality that was not quite lost on Naruto. He shivered for a bit as he found himself under her amused gaze and felt a bit embarrassed by the attention. "What's the matter, kid? Fox got your tongue?" Those words, spoken with a melodious accent, brought him back to his surroundings. "Who are you? And where are we?" he asked with some confusion. "Odd, I just asked the same question a while back and now I know the answer." "How should I answer you, kid?" "Well, where we are is in your mind." Looking around, he scrunched up his face before scratching his head. "And are you some figment of my imagination then?" asked Naruto flippantly. As soon as the words left his mouth, he realized that he had made a mistake. The woman's face darkened over and was about to say something before she calmed down. With a light laugh, she responded with a chiding smirk, "Far from it. Consider me to be your best friend for the rest of your life." A friend would have been something that Naruto would have jumped at when he was younger. But when your friends abandon you at the drop of a hat, lie to your face and leave you, he had learned to guard his heart well. "What is your name?" the blonde asked carefully. The woman smiled and spoke softly, "Call me." Naruto blinked and scratched his head as he couldn't quite catch her words. "What did you say?" "I couldn't hear you." The Kyuubi frowned before repeating her words. "My name is." For some reason, he could tell that her lips were moving and that sound was coming out, but he just couldn't understand the words. It was a weird feeling, like someone was speaking in another language, but not quite. The Kyuubi looked disappointed. "It looks like he is not quite ready to hear my name." "Maybe it is for the best. He probably isn't quite ready for it anyways, and I can always use it to bargain with. Speaking of which, my name is something special, and you will hear it when you're ready, I guess," she hedged with a smile. "How can a person's name be special?" Naruto asked with genuine curiosity. With a wide grin the woman laughed and ruffled his hair gently. "How can a person's name not be special? It is the mark of their soul, their individuality and identity that separates you from the rest of the world. The barrier of the soul that lies at the heart of your spirit." Seeing that the boy seemed a bit lost, she realized that it was a bit too philosophical for a 6-year-old. "Okay, how about this? Names let us know what something is and what they are. Wouldn't you say that is important?" "I guess so," said the blonde, not quite convinced but not wanting to be rude at the same time. "In any event, even if I can't tell you my name, I'm sure you can guess who I am." "Let's see, I am in my mind. I'm speaking to my new best friend. There is no one else around me. I'm the container for the Kyuubi no Yoko. There is a red-haired lady with 9 ponytails." "Oh," the Jinchuriki blinked before shaking his head. "You're the Kyuubi, aren't you? I expected you to be, well, a huge 9-tailed fox. Aren't you a smart boy? Normally I can take that form, but it gets so stereotyped after a while. Being in this form lets me have so much more fun." With that she walked behind him before giving him a hug. her arms snaking around his thin shoulders, and she laid her chin on the top of his head. Processing the information, he realized the enormity of his situation and tried to struggle free of her grasp. "It was you. All your fault. You're the reason why everyone hates me. Why my mother left and won't come back. Don't come near me. I hate you." He spat out spitefully and glared at her with all the anger a 6-year-old possessed. But then again, Naruto was no ordinary 6-year-old. His cerulean eyes burned with righteous anger as he found something to blame for all the misery he had suffered. She sighed and worked hard to defuse the situation. "Oh Naruto-kun, do you think I planned for myself to be sealed into you? That I chose to be placed into your body?" At this point, he stopped and gave a hesitant shake of his head. Seeing that he was listening to her, she continued to speak, "Of course not. I was just doing something important when this all happened. Is it my fault that the villagers can't see you for who you really are, and not me? I didn't force them to ignore you, hate you, and scorn you. If anything, I would gladly help you punish those that treated you so poorly. And your mother, don't get me started on that treacherous bitch." Naruto felt compelled to defend his absent parent. "Don't you call her that." She gave a soft sigh. "Oh kid, can't you remember all those times when you were small? When you would wake up with cuts on your arms that you just didn't remember getting before you went to bed? Don't you remember the scars and the odd, guilty looks your mother gave you when you woke up?" Naruto shook his head, desperately denying the truth that had haunted him, truths that he placed into the back of his mind because he feared the answers to his questions. "Here, Naruto-kun, let me show you something. What really happened when you were asleep all those years. And maybe you can understand why you are better off without your mother." Flashback. Naruto was in another world, like he was looking out of the body of another person. But the sensation was not quite right. If he was supposed to be sleeping, then his eyes would have been closed. But the chakra points manipulated by the Kyuubi gave a rather holistic picture of what was happening around him. Even to access his optic nerves to see parts of the spectrum normally hidden to human eyes. With sickening clarity, it was all revealed to him, and he knew that she spoke the truth. Little inconsistencies that he ignored were now exposed in their stark glory. He did remember all of those accidents that seemed to go away in a few hours, and how he found a blood-stained kunai in his mother's room when he went exploring around as she wouldn't let him out of the house. He now saw how she stood above him, a glazed and half-mad look in her eyes, and the knife slowly descended to his chest, before being slashed aside, making a shallow cut into his arm that healed, leaving marred skin as the only evidence to her madness. End flashback. Naruto slumped back, wide-eyed as he tried to deny the images that he had just seen. He tried to convince himself that they were all elaborate lies, that his mother could never do such things to him, but a part of him was quiet and knew that something wasn't quite right with his childhood. The Kyuubi sighed before placing her hand on his shoulder. "Well Kit, how do you feel about things now?" He looked at her angrily, but the fire in his eyes had died down somewhat. I still hate you. If you didn't attack, I would still have parents, people would like me. I wouldn't be alone. This isn't going to plan." There was much truth to his words, and once again a bit of misdirection would be necessary to keep the peace. We can argue at causation all day long and we would not come to an agreement. While it is true that I attacked the village, it wasn't like I intended to make your life a living hell. Far from it. And your parents, they sacrificed you easily enough, didn't they? They had no choice. Of course they did. Everyone has a choice. Except for you and me. We were robbed of our choices. You lost your freedom the day you were born. And your parents didn't do a thing to stop it from happening. What kind of parent is that? Was it really in your best interest to have me sealed into you? As much as he wanted to deny it, he couldn't help but feel the truth in her statements. His mother didn't prevent the burden from being forced upon him, and she left him anyways after it had happened. She even tried to kill him. Bile rose up in his mouth, leaving him with a vicious promise. Never again, that woman is not my mother. Never again. And his father? Well, he never knew the man and no one would ever give a straight answer to his questions. He was piecing things together, but he would never really get confirmation, not just yet anyways. But he did nothing to stop them. Hell, he probably gave me up without a second's thought or regret. Seeing those morbid thoughts running in his mind, the Kyuubi decided to press her advantage. Know this, kid, you will never be alone again. I will be with you always because at the end of the day, we only have each other. I cannot undo the past, no one can. But we can make the best of our situation and forge a better tomorrow for the both of us. What do you say? It wasn't like Naruto was going to get a better offer anytime soon. Sure, there was some lingering resentment towards the Biju, but there was nothing he could do about that now. What was done was, well, done. He could spend the rest of his life wallowing in anger, but that would mean nothing and lead him nowhere. Having his choices taken away had left one strong imprint on his consciousness. Never again would he be helpless. Not to another man, woman, demon or death god. He would be his own master and no one else's. But he was still a bit suspicious of the fox spirit, but he took a risk. It was on this day that a promise of a lifetime was made. One that would forever change the fate of two worlds. So, what happens now? He asked. The fox demon gave a smile before wrapping herself around Naruto one more time. It was too long since someone had held him in such an intimate way before, not even when he was with his moth. Kushina-san. It was slightly uncomfortable for him, making his muscles tense up. Feeling it, the Kyuubi lowered her mouth onto his ear and whispered. Don't worry, Naruto-kun, I am not going to hurt you. If I do, I will only be hurting myself. I am yours, and you are mine. Just relax and let me treat you the way that you deserve to be treated. Slowly, Naruto loosened his muscles and relaxed into her embrace. It was a unique feeling of safety and contentment as they both reclined against a park tree. He could breathe in her scent that lingered around the air. Wildflowers. She smells like wildflowers. There was a comfortable silence before the Kyuubi moved on to the next stage of her plan. Kit, let me tell you a bit about our powers. As she began lying to her host, she could not help but feel a bit dirty about her deception. She wanted access to her chakra again, and if a bit of creative spinning was needed, then she would do it. Kitsune were not known for deception without good reason. For Naruto, the feeling of contentment was not something he had felt before. He reveled in it and for once could truly relax and be himself. He felt oddly attached to the female, and she did bear a somewhat distant resemblance to Kushina. Deciding that he would enjoy the moment while it lasted, he slowly drifted off into oblivion while the red-haired fox gently ran her fingers through his hair. Konoha, Naruto's apartment. Naruto woke up feeling better than he had for ages. The perpetually sick feeling that plagued him for the last few months was gone and he realized that things seemed sharper than ever. His vision cleared up and things even smelled better. Stretching his muscles, he felt like he was a new person. In some ways I am. I have a new friend with me, and I finally understand what happened and why they treat me like that. Things would now change. He looked up and saw Kazuki standing beside him, an odd look on his face. What did the boy do? Contact with a Zanpakuto should not have done that. It seems to have worked, the Ryotsu is stabilizing, but the other chakra seems to be working in concert. It is almost like a bridge has been forged between the two, and he can stand in the middle, drawing on both. If I could change this for Shinigamis and Hollows. Leaving that thought for another day, he decided to see how the other blonde was doing. How are you feeling? He asked with some concern. Great, said Naruto boisterously, feeling better than he had for his entire life. He was taken aback at the genuinely happy tone. His seeming depression appeared to have left, and a smile graced his face, transforming into something remarkable. If I was female, I would probably be gushing at the sheer cuteness of it all, he thought with some amusement. That's good to hear. What happened when you made contact? As Naruto explained what had actually happened, it all seemed to connect for Urahara. When he mentioned about the soul of his Zanpakuto, he frowned for a bit. The explanations are not really correct. I never expected that the soul of his blade would be the Kyuubi, though it does make a lot of sense. It is a part of his soul, but I would not think it would have the purest of intentions. I would not want to see what his inner hollow would be. That better not happen. Well, Naruto, let me explain a few things to you. A Zanpakuto looks like a sword, but it's in reality the heart of a Shinigami's power. It helps forge a connection to your Ryotsu, allowing you to do things that normal people cannot. Like shinobi? He asked excitedly. Well, yes, but the power that we draw upon is different, possible in fundamental ways. I am not very sure myself and I'm going to look into it as well. The point is, it should be possible for you to use chakra and Ryotsu at the same time. Really? That sounds awesome. He chuckled at his enthusiasm and nodded, doesn't it? However, there might be some unseen circumstances because of it. Learn the basics of Kenjutsu first before trying your powers. What? Come on, What's the worst that could happen? Asked Naruto cavalierly. You dying. The balance between the demonic chakra and Ryotsu being disturbed, that something even weirder changes your body. I really don't know. Many bad things. You can't really use Ryotsu anyways, as there is no one here that can teach you anyways. Naruto blinked before looking at Kazuki hopefully. How about you? Can you stay here and teach me? The blonde Shinigami shook his head regretfully. As much as I would like to, I can't. I have a division to run, people to look after, and underground caverns to build. Air anyways, I will visit from time to time. How about this? If I'm happy with your skills, I'll teach you something useful, okay? While Naruto wasn't too happy, he didn't want to be too pushy too soon. Alright, that sounds fair. Honestly, Kazuki would have loved to stay and observe the other blonde. But his absence from Soul Society wasn't something that he could have maintained for a very long period of time. Even with the time dilation that seems to result from the dimensional travel, things were still uncertain and his absence would be missed and some questions would be asked that he wouldn't want to answer. Not yet anyways. He could still visit and see how things were going. In any event, he had new ideas to try out regarding a certain black orb. Just remember, your Zanpakuto will speak to you and give you some advice. Usually it is something useful, but at times it can just be a riddle to make you grow stronger by yourself. Each soul is different. From yours though, I would be careful. Though we cannot undo the past, we need to learn from it, he added rather vaguely. Some would say that those were prophetic words. No doubt Kazuki would remember them with bitter irony. Thinking carefully, he decided to give some more advice. I don't think the Kyuubi was entirely trustworthy before the sealing. I don't think it would change that much. Once again, be careful, okay? Naruto nodded dutifully and then scrunched his face in confusion. Why can't I hear her name? Kazuki didn't quite want to answer that question yet, but didn't think it would cause too much damage. A person's name is important. In fact, all names are important. They are a unique identifier that shape our perception of events and create our sense of individuality. Our Zanpakutos are sealed with levels of power that are given to us when we are ready, or when we need it. The boy scratched his head in thought. Isn't the power mine already? The Shinigami cocked his head slightly before nodding. Kinda. The souls decide if we can use it responsibly, otherwise we would have Shinigami with too much power on their hands with insufficient maturity to use it. Lots of problems can come from that. Do you understand? I guess so. Urahara shrugged before pointing at Naruto's Zanpakuto. Look at your blade now, does it look different? Lifting the katana up to his eyes, he could see that the blade had changed its appearance. Its once rather generic-looking form gained some peculiar features. Its blade was now thicker in its width, nearing 2 inches at the hilt before tapering off to the tip. The whole blade and hilt was curved slightly, like a bow. The blade itself was a shimmering mixture of folded steel with a near-invisible rippled pattern that bordered its cutting edge. Curiously enough, it was designed as a near triple-bladed weapon. Its tip and recurve was also edged, allowing it to be used for thrusts in a more effective manner than a normal single-bladed katana. The hilt itself was wrapped in black and orange sharkskin, its unique texture giving it sufficient tactile grip to ensure that it would not slip from the wielder's hands. The pommel had a semicircular hole going through it. Looking at his sheath, it pretty much remained the same. Black lacquered wood, with retaining hooks towards the center. Upon closer inspection there was a light pattern engraved throughout, though it was not something that he could make out easily. The size of that blade, damn. He sure does have a lot of spiritual energy. I shouldn't be surprised though. It's going to help him develop some serious muscle for a kid. It wasn't like this before, was it? Asked Naruto in awe. The blonde grinned at his surprise before shaking his head. Nope. It has now, well, personalized itself to you and reflects the amount of spiritual power that you have. When you manage to hear your Zanpakuto's name, it will change again. Anyways, I have spoken to your Hokage about all of this, and he has promised to assign some people to help you prepare for the future. Train hard, Gaki, and remember that things will get better now. For the second time that evening Naruto gave a genuine smile. It was near brilliant in its intensity and his cerulean eyes danced, revealing to Kazuki the happy soul residing in the boy. He gave a lopsided grin in return, glad that he could make a few things right for the blonde. I'm expecting good things from you, boy. Please don't disappoint me. For Naruto this was the start of something special. No longer an unwanted orphan that was left alone and consumed by loneliness, He discovered a presence in his soul that would never leave him, along with some answers in his life. He would work hard and become stronger. There was no turning back as he made that promise to himself. Uzumaki Naruto does not go back on his word. Konoha, Hokage's office. The blonde Shinigami said his farewells before making another flashy exit. What is with those damn petals? My home is going to be a bitch to clean afterwards. With the promise in hand, Naruto went to the Hokage's office to speak to him about the tutors that Kazuki mentioned before his departure. As he was going to enter into the tower, he was stopped by two Chunin guards that gave him a hard look before letting him through. They knew that the Sandame had a soft spot for the boy and was usually happy to see him. They did not want to risk his displeasure by messing with the boy, as much as they would have liked to. Naruto, upon seeing their rather dirty looks, lost a bit of the happiness he had achieved during the night and schooled his face into blank indifference. As he approached the secretary, who gave him a neutral look, he was ushered into the office where Sarutobi sat, along with two others. One was a male wearing a Chunin jacket with a katana sheathed on his back. He had a somewhat long face and bags under his eyes. He gave a small, rasping cough that he covered with his hand before standing back at ease. The other was a violet-haired kunoichi also clad in a Chunin jacket. She seemed to be lithe and athletic, with a mild teasing look on her face with warm brown eyes. I wonder who they could be. If they are to be your teachers, well, I'm not impressed. They could have assigned a Junin at least. Who knows, maybe they can be useful to us? It's a possibility. The two Chunin looked at the blonde Jinchuriki and made their first impressions. He is thin, more so than what is healthy for a boy his age. And his eyes, there are traces of sadness and a hardness that shouldn't be there as well. Looks like he has a sword already, though that blade looks ridiculous for someone his size and age. Well, at least we have something in common then. Surprising that so much power is in such a small package. Those whisker marks are pretty cute though, but that face is too thin. I thought all kids had some puppy fat on them before puberty. And those eyes, it's like an azure ocean staring straight at you. But there is a brittleness in them, like a person that has had things happen to them that has scared them. You interest me, Uzumaki Naruto? I was told to come here, Hokage Jiji? Sarutobi let loose a breath that he did not remember holding. At least some things stayed the same, and there was comfort in that. The two Chunin gave an amused look at him before he gave a small shrug. He didn't really mind, and it was nice to be seen as a normal person, instead of an infallible leader. That was something he surely wasn't. Yes, Naruto. I want you to meet these two people, pointing to the Chunin. Gekko Hayate, said man raised his hand and gave a small nod to him. Azuki Yugo, said woman gave a light wink at him. They will be your teachers from now on. Listen to them and learn everything that you can from them. Show everyone what you are capable of, Naruto. Do you have any questions? He asked kindly. Teachers, I wonder what they could teach you. The man with the sword may be able to help with your kenjutsu, but the other? It seems like they are there to spy on you, kid. Don't be so suspicious. What do I call you anyways? Ha ha ha, good question. Call me Q-chan for now. He shook his head quickly. No, not really. When do we start? The two Chunins gave a smirk before replying. Tomorrow morning at 0400 hours. What? Why so early? Yugo smirked before answering. Think of it as a test, Naruto. We want to measure your capacity. Still happy about having those teachers, kit? Konoha. Classified location. In a location that was known to a select few, a scarred man was sitting down on a rather comfortable chair, musing about Konoha's current geopolitical situation. It was a place that he would not be disturbed in, his own little private sanctuary built deep underground and secret so that he could do what he did best. While it was a nightmare to redirect the funds from other legitimate public works, it was a place that was near impervious to assault and laced with privacy seals. It's amazing how many $20,000 hammers you can place an order for and no one seems the wiser. All of this was built for good reason. The plans devised here could have easily been construed as treason, depending on your definition of the word. The scarred man considered himself to be a true patriot, a man that did what was necessary for his village, regardless of the costs that needed to be paid. The reason was that the alternative was just unacceptable. Then again, hardly anyone considered themselves to be monsters in their own minds. Sarutobi, how our vision has departed from each other. It's like we are traveling on parallel paths, reaching the same destination but using different methods. The fate of a weak village was destruction. If you could not protect yourself, then you really did not have the right to exist. In this treacherous world of ours, others would gladly take what you have built for themselves. Danzo had seen the horrors of war as it was visited onto by other nations. The sacking and wanton destruction of infrastructure, its people being torn apart and living the lives of desperate refugees, fleeing into God knows where for a measure of safety. The risk of capture by the enemy, being sold into slavery and separated from loved ones. Seeing them being placed into internment camps, where your living came at a cost that you could not contemplate. Children being turned against their parents and nations, women facing rapine and used as mere playthings for the victors. This was not a fate that Konoha would ever suffer as long as he drew breath. Those fools think that the creation of the laws of war will protect them. They mean nothing to a shinobi or a soldier when their blood is up. Seeing dead comrades changes people. They would take their anger out on anything that is nearby. Better avoid the situation altogether. Too many people called him a war hawk, a person that was really just a junkie for battle and conflict. There was an element of truth to that. He considered that warfare was the ultimate, and possibly only, method of conflict resolution. If you did not have the power to enforce something, then how could you ensure that things that nations agreed to would be adhered to? And isn't life one conflict after another really? Obstacles that stand in your way, that eventually needed to be killed if they did not back down from you. Though that wasn't to say that he did not agree with the Sandaime. His vision of peace was something beautiful, and in a perfect world, he would have embraced it wholeheartedly. Unfortunately, reality was full of unscrupulous and malign individuals, willing to take advantage of others for any sort of advantage. Hell, it's all part of a vicious circle that we dug for ourselves anyways. We can only thank our forefathers for this. What did he mean? Simply put, the mere existence of shinobi meant that peace could never truly exist. It was a case of mutually assured destruction. One nation having shinobi meant that everyone else had to as well, to defend against any potential invasion. It all led to a series of escalations, into new and frightening jutsus, to secret weapons being developed and deployed, to legends that were the heart of each nation. The seven swordsmen of the mist, Konoha's Sannin, Iwa's guardians of the rock. It seems that we have unintentionally reached the latest pinnacle of deterrence. A Jinchuriki, with such frightening power. And Uzumaki Naruto being the latest and possible the best of them all. While the conventional military forces, along with the 11 Anbu divisions, were more than sufficient to fight a conventional war, the existence of the Jinchuriki changed it all. Other nations would now try to find ways to replicate the sealing process. Though Naruto's condition was a secret, it was too well known and notorious for it not to slip out eventually. The boy can have the potential to be a great weapon or ally. Letting him lay fallow like this, what the hell is he thinking? Treat any being with hatred and don't be surprised when it reciprocates. With that in mind, he gave an order to a operative. The secret 12th division of the elite corps of Konoha shinobi. Unlike the mainstream conventional Anbu units, it was something of a mystery. They acted entirely independently of the Hokage and the Council of Fire, and were really Danzo's personal army. A paramilitary force that acted illegally and without official authorization. As such, they took on missions that were too sensitive for a village to be publicly involved in. Now that was saying a lot, considering that they were a shinobi village and took on all sorts of shady missions for clients if the money was right. The nature of their work was usually dirty and unethical. Was likened to thugs and highwaymen. Instead of preying upon citizens, they terrorized other nations and villages. But as long as the end justifies the means, isn't that what is important? Keep Naruto-kun under surveillance. Do it discreetly and report to me of anything that happens to him. Understood? The black-garbed operative gave a nod before walking off. If Sarutobi is unwilling to give the boy the training and help that he needs, then I will do so. With training, he will truly be a force for Konoha's good. Contrary to popular belief, were not mindless tools indoctrinated to serve Danzo. He despised mindless automatons that were not flexible enough to actually take on the complex missions they were expected to carry out. All of them were volunteers who were vetted from the existing military forces and carefully screened before they received a rigorous 12-month training selection regimen. Those that could not cut it were returned back to unit, creating the term artiyude, with their memories wiped through a series of complex genjutsus. It created a truly diversified force that operated either as single or two-man cells. Hiding them is a damn bitch, especially from Sarutobi. I really need to find a new pool of talent somehow to avoid him noticing that his forces are being pinched from him. Money is getting harder to find anyways. People would question the need for such a force in this current day and age. Surely the conventional Chunin and Junin forces, along with Anbu, would be enough? But things were looking dire. Even 6 years after the Kyuubi's rampage, their forces have not been able to be replaced fully. It would take at least 18 years to replace one generation. At least 3 had been lost. Iwa was looking murderous again, and he was getting disturbing reports that Orochimaru was planning on setting up his own hidden village. That treacherous bastard is up to something. Why didn't Sarutobi kill him when he had the chance? That folly is going to cost us more than we can afford. He is still carrying a chip the size of a boulder on his shoulder, and he would gladly destroy us and use the citizens in his inhuman experiments. With reports coming in daily, the outlook was rather grim. It seemed that they needed one hell of a deterrent to keep the hounds from their throats, until at least another 12 years. He admitted that the Sandame's current approach was working well, and birth rates and graduation rates increasing steadily. But they needed something more. It is our legacy of victory, he mused sadly, the rewards of winning being the undying hatred of the vanquished. It all leads back to a vicious circle of avowed hatred and anger that will keep on coming until we can forgive and forget. And since we cannot really do that, we are trapped in the cycle. The result was total war. A war that was like a goddamned machine that fed upon the blood of our sons, daughters, fathers, sisters, brothers, lovers. Only to be replaced by new blood in each generation. Will we always be paying for the sins of our fathers? A terrible thought struck him. Is he contributing to this cycle that Konoha's future sons and daughters will end up paying the butcher's bill? All of this got to him at times. The bone-aching weariness in doing the most distasteful things for a village that would more than likely crucify him if they ever found out about his actions. Better I suffer than the whole village go down. I wonder, are our lives ever worth the pursuit of grand principle? Little did he know that it was a question that would haunt another man in the coming nights. Regardless of his philosophical musings, one thing was abundantly clear to him. They needed Uzumaki Naruto. And with a determined look on his face, Danzo knew just the thing to bring him into the fold.
That's all for now. If you want to see next part, then please like this video and subscribe my channel. Thank you.